Hey everybody, I got recently asked for a video that actually shows how to pull the weight bar off of the fabric. So if you are changing out fabric on a shade, it's got a rip, a tear, something's happened to it, this is going to show you how to actually take the weight bar off of without having to do a whole bunch of extra steps. So if you are by yourself, which sometimes some service technicians are when they go out to do a repair, you might not have two guys available. It's best to have two guys because putting the hood cover on is what is always the trickiest part. Getting the fabric off and putting the new fabric on is not the issue. It's always this, putting the hood cover on. So what I recommend, you'll see I have a step ladder putting down here because if I was to do this by myself, this is a very small unit. It's very easy to maneuver with. But if it's 20 foot or something like that, you want to have a step ladder. Because when you take the weight bar off, you can slide it into the step ladder and leave it, change the fabric, slide it right back, and you're just maneuvering without having to lift the whole weight bar and everything. Hopefully that makes sense. First off, what you're going to do is you want to remove the track cap cover that covers the screws off on both sides, remove the tracks, and then that gives you access to the weight bar. I don't do any of this. You need to take the tracks off first. You'll roll it about halfway down, and then there's screws, but we'll go over all those steps. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I take two very small screwdrivers, flat blade. What you're going to do is force it underneath the track cap, lift it up slightly, and as you do, you take your secondary screwdriver or a 5-in-1 tool, 15-in-1, one of those little scraper looking things that I always talk about. Then you're going to pry it up just very slightly. You don't want to chip or scratch the track, and you just want to work your way down. Now once you get it out enough, you don't want to wedge or rip it because it is aluminum, it will bend. But once you get it out enough, you can usually get a little bit bigger screwdriver underneath it. And this is what helps you wedge this in there to where you can get that cap off just enough. And then what you're going to do is just run the screwdriver down very slowly. And as you wiggle it, you'll see it come off, and it just pulls off, snaps in just as easy as it, comes off just as easy as it snaps in. And you just work your way down a little at a time. You just want to be careful with the face of the track. A lot of times I'll start at the bottom because if you scratch or something or do something wrong at the bottom, it's a little easier to hide than it is at the top. So see, that came off very easily. It's not bent. Nothing's wrong with it. I'll keep this on the same side. So remember, that's the side for that, just in case they're different heights or different measurements. We're going to do the same thing over here. Go down quite as far. You can see this cap came off too. I'm keeping it on this side. Now this gives you access to all the screws. You're going to put it right back in the exact same screws that you're taking them out of, so you don't need to be as precise. Just keep up with the screws. Let me grab my drill real quick. And then what I'm going to do is just remove the screws. This is what holds the track to the structure. Set those screws off to the side, And then what you're going to do is, I actually rolled this down slightly. I'm going to roll it back up. Oh, I guess I didn't. What I'm doing is putting it into limit adjustment mode, just so I can take it up a little higher to be able to pull the tracks off. And then what you're going to do is move the track off the floor, and then just ever so slightly slide it off of the weight bar. This is a 3.5 inch, the 3-inch weight bar, so it is a little tighter because it's a short shade. Doesn't give me enough room to pull it off. But there's a vinyl insert in here that zipper goes down into. Now, that does not mean like the zipper on your pants or your jacket that it actually zippers together. It's a fabric retention system. All that does is that vinyl insert that's inside of there holds that zipper in place as it's rolling up and down. And plus, it helps give for a bug-free or almost bug-free porch by holding it inside of the tracks, and it helps it guide and keep it straight as it's rolling up and down. Okay, so now at this step, there is, on this particular weight bar, it has 3 screws. These 3 screws is what holds the fabric in the correct location by holding onto the zipper. And it's very precise. As you can see right now, the edge of the zipper lines up with the edge of the cap. Not sure if you all can see that. I'll move it over a little bit. This cap has to line up with this zipper. If this zipper is too far in or too far out, it will bind and not roll up and down smoothly. So this zipper, whenever you put the new fabric in, don't try and stretch it real tight across there. What you want to do is line one side up, and then as you're working your way across, just slightly slide this across, see where it falls on the other side. If you need to give it just a little bit of a tug, that's fine. Be very, very aware that this fabric does stretch. In the winter, it gets stiff. It doesn't shrink. It just gets stiff. It doesn't flex as much as it does in the summer or in the warmer climates. So what you're going to do is, I'm not going to do everything completely, but I roll it partially down. Now these screws are very, very small and they're very hard to keep a hold of. So, be very careful that you don't drop them. Take a screwdriver, and what you're going to do is take these screws out. Also be aware when you get new fabric, the actual zipper on the side is going to hang down really long because they don't know what size weight bar you ordered originally. So they leave it real long. I recommend cutting it flush with the bottom of the weight bar. The reason why is usually whenever they send a new screen, it's as long as the pile on the bottom of the weight bar. But if you have the slope, which is usually each end of the patio, if you go to smash this inside of the tracks, this is going to bunch up. You won't get that, you've usually got, an inch to inch and a half of slope on a patio for the water runoff. I like to cut these flush, so if during the setting of the limits, when you get this side closest to the house, you might have to smash this down, and when this zipper is real long, it bunches up in the track and it won't allow it to creates the ripples real bad at there, and it won't give you, fill in the gap on the other side that you might have under the pile. But what you're going to do is take all 3 of these screws out on both sides. Okay, now the zipper itself, and I'll pull the ones on the other side just so I can slide it out, and it'll help you understand a little bit more, because the fabric on the bottom closest to the weight bar. So this fabric, as it goes into the weight bar, it's held on by a zipper also. So that zipper has a groove in that weight bar it needs to go into. Now, sometimes you can get lucky, leave the caps on both ends and slide the fabric in and out. It's a little tense doing it that way. Sometimes it's best to take whichever side you're going to be sliding the fabric into. As you can see, the zipper, you'll see the screw, where the holes are. The zipper stays in there, but whichever side you're going to slide the fabric into. So if you're going to slide it off this side, then what you'll do is, I always take the cap off the side. It just helps me guide it in a little better. So I've got all the 6 screws. Hold on to those so you don't lose them. A lot of times the installers will drop them in the grass, and once you drop them, it's very, very hard to find them. And then, so as you slide this out, you'll see there's a zipper on the bottom of the weight bar. There is a groove in this weight bar where that zipper needs to actually fit into. So like I'm saying, right now, I can slide it across very easy, and that's why you have the ladder on the other side. Turn that a little bit just in case. Okay, so what I usually do is get it close to halfway down or the bigger steps on the ladder, and then you can slide this across, and as it's going across, you can slide this all the way across, and as you see, I'm still able to move around because the ladder is holding that weight bar. Now, if it's a really, really long shade, 20 feet or something like that, the wind might blow and it might fall, that ladder might knock over or something like that. This is just to help you guide it on and off. So I have literally, on the big shades, taken it off, set it on the ground, changed the fabric and things like that. So what we're going to do is, I've got my shade down because it's a little windy today. I'm actually going to take this off. So if you are changing out fabric on a shade, okay, what you're going to do at this point, you don't need to open the hood or anything. So you've done everything, you've taken the fabric off the weight bar. Roll the shade all the way down to the last limit. Now you might have to help it because there's no weight on it right now. You don't want the obstacle detection or anything to kick in. So as you roll it down, get it to the bottom, okay, let it stop on its own as you're helping it. That's your lower limit. Now you go into adjustment mode. Press the up and down arrows at the same time. By pressing the up and down arrows, that shade will jog. That means it's in limit adjustment mode. Then what you're going to do is keep bumping it down, and just keep bumping it down until you start hearing the Velcro on the tube. What that does is that fabric will unroll, and it'll keep unrolling, and then it'll get to where that fabric, that zipper, the Velcro is on the bottom of the tube, and you'll start hearing it. You can slightly pull on it, and you'll hear that Velcro. Literally, give it a slight tug and just work your way across. That fabric will fall off the tube. And then what you do is just leave it alone. Okay, leave it alone. It will jog on its own after 2 minutes, revert back to the last setting, but now pop the hood off, take the new fabric, feed it up, no weight bar on it, just feed it up, get it set where you want it. It's free flowing, okay? Then what I recommend doing, because sometimes these shades are hardwired, and ran up into the soffit and you can't get up there to get to clear the motor, okay? Before you put that weight bar back on that on that fabric, please listen very closely. Roll the shade up. Let it roll all the way up. Flop over the tube one time. Because when it flops over the tube, now the limits are in a different spot. You won't have to get up to clear the motor. Then what you do is roll it back down. Put your fabric on the weight bar. Okay, so inside of this tube, you'll see there's a little round section. That's where the groove is for the zipper to feed into. So what I'm going to do now is, I'm just going to hold this slightly, pull it over, take the zipper, fold it up, and what you're going to do is this zipper on the bottom, you're going to find that groove spot. Okay, I fed it back in there, and as you're working your way across, you're going to get as far as you can just by lightly giving the friction of the weight bar just a little bit. Now, if you get to a point where you can't slide it anymore, This is when you might have to wiggle it across, but if you have two people, it makes it real easy. This person's grabbing the weight bar, the other person's holding the fabric at the top, and all you're doing is pulling it across. And then what you're going to do, again, is lining up the zipper. Come on, get in there. I want to get in there all the way. We've had a couple of different fabrics on these end caps, and I think the end cap is screwed a little, squeezed a little tight. Let me find my screwdrivers and I will pry it open right there. Just enough to get that zipper in there. Yep. So you want the zipper, again, this edge of the zipper needs to be edged with and aligned with the end cap. This is the part of the weight bar end cap that is close to the side track whenever it's put together. That's how it lines up. If it's too far in, too far out, it causes it to not want to glide very smoothly. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, as you'll see, there's ripples because the other side's not all the way in yet. But before you start going to do that, I would recommend putting this side in together. Check the camera real quick. Make sure it's still recording. All right, good. Don't want you all to miss any of these steps. What I'm going to do is roll it up slightly so maybe it makes it a little easier. I'm not having to bend over also. But then you'll see some of the ripples. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is put the screw in there because the new fabric will not have holes in it. You just need to push against it slightly as you're screwing it in. Just hold the zipper so it lines up correctly. I put the top one in first only because you want it to hold in place. Okay, and then I do the very last one at the bottom. I don't do the one in the center yet, but that's just my preference. Other people do it different ways. Other installers can chime in, say the way they do it. It's fine. I'm just, going the way I do it. Okay, that's 2 in. Now I've put the one in the center in. Now at this point, just tighten them up a little bit. They stick out a little on the back side and I don't want to go too much. Now I'm going to take the other 3, and I'm going to go to the other side. Now, as I said before, you don't want to pull real tight, just ever so slightly. I mean, all you're doing is trying to move the wrinkles down a little bit to give you a little bit of extra loose to pull this side. So what I'm going to do now is pull this out. I think this one's the same way. Okay. We're going to slide this zipper in. Line it up right where it needs to be. And then again, we're going to I start at the top to screw that one in so it keeps the location correct of where the fabric is supposed to fall. Then I go to the very last one of the 3 screws. Now the smaller weight bar that is used in this particular system is a 2-inch. We recommend that can be used up to about 20 feet without any deflection issues. Once you get beyond that, deflection starts happening and that little weight bar flexes a little too much and causes that. That's why this bigger weight bar was designed to be used. Now, like I said before you put this on, flap one over, because what's going to happen is your limit's going to be in a different spot. So at that time, then what you can do is you roll it up. Okay, let's say because it flopped one over, it put that limit way down here. I mean, right now you're not going to notice it, but it'll do like almost one full wrap. So that's usually about 6 inches. So the fabric will be probably down somewhere in here. That's where you can go into adjustment mode after you get the tracks on, and you adjust those limits and bring it back to where you want it to be afterwards. But if you do it, put the weight bar on now, and it keeps hitting this, it won't allow you to get to that upper limit to be able to adjust it. That means you have to clear the motor out and start fresh all over again. So at this point, it went back to the original limit that I had. You're going to take your weight bar. Like I said, I recommend cutting it off, even with the bottom of the weight bar to make it, I think it's easier to put it in the track, but also so you can smash it on one side if you need to. So at this point, what you're going to do is lift the weight bar just slightly at a slant. You're going to try and slide it on. Now, if you do not get it on the first try on a normal install, there could be a burr in there, but this has already been installed before. So what we're going to do also is, on this particular one, we're going to line it back up. I see the screw hole in there. I'm going to take my screws, and I'm only going to put the top screw on each side. And the reason why is because it's not aligned on the tube correctly. Yes, you put it on there, but when you put it on there, it does not matter, because it rolling up and down, it could have telescoped to the right or to the left, and it might not align correctly. So when you put the first screw on the top, this is the same way I teach in the installation class, certification class that I teach, is to put the top screw on both sides, okay? And because that is already physically attached, you're literally just take the track, lean it out just slightly. You're going to slide the track up a little bit. Make sure you try and you get it in there. And then after I do that, align the track back up again. Now my hole is in the correct location. Screw the two top screws in, and then what you're going to do now at this point is, I recommend roll it all the way down and then all the way back up, so it recenters the fabric on the tube correctly, the way the matrix we make these shades. Now as it's rolling down, I would recommend pushing on it, make sure it's in the tracks on both sides, so you're not doing a whole bunch of extra steps without checking it. Now the screws holes were already there before. Now, as it's moving, I mean, right now it's flexing, the whole structure's flexing a little bit. So, this is just a display shade that I use for training purposes. So, you roll it back up, and then what I would recommend, since you already have holes screwed in, and the track kind of free flows a little bit, but it's recentering the fabric on the tube, I would just do one side of putting all the screws back in the original holes. Now, I drove this structure all the way to Dallas and back, and I built it. And that was with snow and ice and everything. So the structure flexes a little bit. I mean, it has had quite a few miles put on it already. Now what we're going to do is as the shade rolls down, you want to check and make sure that the new fabric didn't change the whole location or anything like that. So I usually roll it down to the first screw. I have a good spacing that you're supposed to have. And the spacing by I mean is you have a space between the weight bar end cap and the side track. You want to have 1/8 of an inch overall. That does not mean 1/8 of an inch on both sides. So some installers will push it to one side so it's touching and then leave their 1/8 inch gap. You do not want to see the screw heads. So if you're ever installing and you can look in there and see the screw heads, if you see the full screw head, all 3 of them, something's out of place. Something somewhere. It could be the zipper on the end, you know, with you changing it out or something like that, that could have put it in a different location. And you don't want big gaps, because that happens with big gaps in here. So if you put an 1/8 of an inch on both sides or put 3/16 or 1/4, what happens is right now it's stiff because it's cold if you installed it. Then the season changes, you're gonna have to go back and adjust. If you make it too tight, then in the winter, if you make it too tight in the summer, that means in the winter it's going to get stiff and you're going to have to go back and adjust it. I'm trying to keep you from not having to go back to do any adjustments. Okay, so what we're going to do is put this screw in, and we're going to do this, repeat this with every location of the screws. And my screws always line up with the middle of the weight bar on both sides, because if I'm doing it between the jam, this is a surface mount. If I'm doing it between the jam, and this is an eyesight thing, as it's rolling up or down and you put your screw from the L bracket into this and you keep it uniform, even if your weight bar is crooked as it's rolling up and down because you have a bias cut or something else is going on, the visual eye will notice that both them screws line up in the same spot. If you measure from the floor up and you start doing them, you know, in increments, one could be an inch lower, well, that means the visual eye, when they're sitting in a chair and they look over that weight bar and they see 2 screws. So it's just, I'm trying to get everybody's mindset the exact same. Okay, so what we're gonna do is go down to the next one. Floor. Now this is where you might have to do an adjustment. Right now I see a ripple at an angle. Okay, anytime you have, you know, fingers, puckers, whatever you want to call them, coming from the corners, that basically means your tracks are out of square or something like that, or there's something underneath that's causing the track not to be able to go all the way down. Now this particular one, the minute I lift it up, those all disappear. I've got extension cord under it right now. But this is when you want to adjust the limit. So press up and down because it stopped on its own. Okay, it jogged. That means you're in adjustment mode. You can bump it up a little bit until it gets rid of the ripple, or, you know, any obstructions underneath. You can pull it out from underneath now. Press and hold the My button once you're done. Jogs again. That means you're out of limit adjustment mode and you're back in normal operation. So now it free moves on its own. At any time that you get that little, you have to keep holding it to get it to move, or it moves in smaller increments, you're still in a limit adjustment mode or in a programming mode. So please be aware, you know, if you're in a programming mode, push the button on the back. If you're in a limit adjustment mode, you press and hold the My button on the front. Hopefully this helps with changing out weight bar. I think I have a dealer that's going out to do their very first fabric change out with a weight bar also, so he wanted a video. And I did one before, but this is a little more in-depth of each one of the steps. Hope this helps everybody. If you have any questions, please leave comments in the area below. All right, thanks. Have a great day.